of a shot of winning. We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
And if I didn't in this case, I say it almost every time. The reason I say that is because I do think there's potential that someday we're going to have an international franchise. And if we do, I think it would not surprise me at all if the Super Bowl follows and is played there. We do like to have it. This is a great example of being here in New Orleans. It's a great thing for the New Orleans Saints to be the host of the Super Bowl, have the world's attention. And I think the same will be true if we had an international franchise to be able to play a Super Bowl there to support that franchise.
And hello and welcome back to the New York Jets Atlantic Flight podcast. I'm your host as usual, Gus. With me today is Daniel and friend of the show, Ben Isaacs. That clip you just heard was Roger Goodells, commissioner, in case you didn't know, speaking just before this year's Super Bowl in New Orleans. And today we're going to be talking about a very real possibility now that an NFL team or even teams could be located outside of the USA. What this means for the NFL as we know it now and the possible ramifications moving forward, good or bad. But before we get into this, I would just like to ask Ben, by the way, he's not a Jets fan, what his opinion is with the Jets and how they've moved on from Aaron Rodgers. First of all, welcome back again, Ben, and hi, Daniel. Nice to see you back again too. Ben, what have you got for us? What do you think?
Well, first off, Gus, thanks for having me. I think the Jets have had a really good off-season. I think they have hired just the sort of head coach. I'm not saying he is going to turn everything around, but he is the sort of head coach that they absolutely need right now. And they needed someone to come in and operate on that team. And the first thing they needed to do was cut out the cancer. They've cut out the cancer in Aaron Rodgers. And now it's let's try and get the patient healthy again. They absolutely had to move on from Aaron Rodgers. It had become a circus. And if everything that has come out is accurate about them saying things like, you've got to come to training camp and you can't spend half your time on YouTube shows. And if he refused those things or he was reluctant to comply with those demands, then he is absolutely not someone that the New York Jets need in the building. The best thing they could have done this year was to get rid of him. So that's a great start. They can now make a fresh start. There is talent on that roster. I can't believe I'm saying these words, but they were absolutely held back by the play of Aaron Rodgers last season. They can improve next year. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team, but I feel a lot more confident about the Jets right now than if we had this conversation in February 2024.
Yeah, you're bringing the fire there, brother. I don't think you're going to get too many arguments from me and Daniel there. Daniel.
I wish you would instill this confidence in half of the fan base over here on the other side of the pond. But geez, I mean that's rave reviews from Ben right there, Gus.
It is. I mean, Ben, over the course of the last few weeks, we've had episode 1, episode 2, episode yada 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 of the Aaron Rodgers show, and we keep saying, oh, we'll put a bow on it this week, but then something else just turns up, and the latest bow on Rodgers is now he's actively seeking out another team within the NFL. Obviously, he's going to want a starting gig. I can't see him wanting to be a backup. It's going to be interesting because
it's going to be the Rams, Gus. It's going to be the Rams.
You think so? Stafford's on his way. So the rumours are that Stafford's going to the Giants, but it's the silly season, so everything with a pinch of salt.
Absolutely. But I mean, geographically, as far away from the Jets as you could possibly get. If he's in LA, that's ideal.
The middle of the Pacific's even better.
Away. or in one of his kind of darkness retreats. I mean, he put the Jets into a darkness retreat. And
yeah.
That absolutely sucks. And obviously there were going to be parallels between him and Brett Favre in the legendary careers at the Packers and then moving on. Favre never really wanted to join the Jets, but he seemed to make an effort when he was at the Jets. it didn't work out. But Aaron Rodgers, oh my God.
Had he not had that
Jesus.
wrist injury, I think it was a wrist injury, we would have been in the playoffs. I mean, at that point,
Yeah.
we were like cruising, and we looked really good. But it'll be ironic if he does end up at the Vikings, following in Favre's footsteps, wouldn't it? That would just be that'd be so Jets. And then having a career with the Vikings as well. I don't think that's going to happen, but anyway, let's not do Aaron Rodgers. Honest to God, I think we're all completely sick of that topic. So let's get on to the NFL.
Gus. What if he joined a franchise in Europe? What about that? How would you feel about that?
Go ahead, Gus. Tell us how you feel about that.
Crack on. What franchise are we talking about here?
Actually, to be honest, the way he played last season, I would put him in the ELF, the European League of Football, where I like the idea of the European League of Football. Some of the teams at least have got the same names. I think there's like the Frankfurt Galaxy and stuff in there, but some teams just don't finish all their games. I think he'd be ideal on one of those teams, frankly.
Yeah, you never know, but he's not going to be. How many? He's done something like 4 or 5 touchdowns behind Brett Favre, which is like tantalizingly close. It is in reach, and that must be eating into him. Because obviously he wants to either get as good as or be better than Brett Favre. Be better, because that's his ego. But let's get on to what Roger Goodell was talking about. I believe Connor Rogers, he's actually done the thing on this. It's actually on YouTube, and I will put a link in when I put this up on Twitter. If you check out the New York Jets Atlantic Flight podcast Twitter, I'm going to put a link on this. It's actually a 3-hour. I haven't listened to it yet. It got sent to me earlier on today by Dylan Terryman. I was talking to him about it, and there's actually a 3-hour show that they've done where they actually do a draft as well. So it's something else. It's 3 hours. I haven't got time to listen to that today, but I will do.
Are we talking like an expansion draft?
Expansion, draft. Yeah, an expansion draft.
Amazing.
So like
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll put a link up to it. I did start listening to it, and I'm like, I need to dedicate more time to this because it's like super interesting. But the idea of having another team outside of the NFL, to me, anyone who listens to this show and anyone that knows me, I am not in favour of this. But I know someone that is in favour of it, and that's Ben.
I feel I am being misrepresented.
Okay. Ben, what are your thoughts on having teams outside of the NFL playing in the NFL league?
I feel it is massively impractical. Right. In some ways, I love the idea of an NFL team. Now, let me take you all back to the start of the original World League of American Football. And on one of the first weeks of the season, it was a game at the Meadowlands, and it was the London Monarchs on the road at the New York, New Jersey Knights, because the regulations that New Jersey had at that point were you could not just be you couldn't be a new team, call yourself New York and play in New Jersey. So they were the New York, New Jersey Knights. And it wasn't a particularly big crowd in the Meadowlands. There's plenty of NFL football that they could have been watching the Meadowlands months previous without settling for the World League of American Football. But this one was set up that this was the sort of thing that they wanted, the idea of New York versus London in the NFL. And they really built this game up. And there was a certain sense of romance about it. And I did like that idea. Now, the World League of American Football obviously is very far away from the idea of a European division in the NFL. And I don't really understand what Roger Goodell is talking about with this, because he had previously kind of put this out there before. He, in 2023, had said, well, really, if we have one team, we're going to need a 4-team European division. Now, let me attack that one first. I don't even like the fact that the teams play 17 games now. It was perfect mathematically at 16, with 8 4-team divisions. Perfect. The symmetry was perfect. I loved that setup. So the idea of you add a division, right? Let's say we were all in favour of this. Let's say we all love the idea of a 4-team European division. Where does it go? Do you put this in the NFC? Do you put it in the AFC? How does it work? Well, the answer is it can't work. You couldn't do it like that. The only way you could do it is we're then onto, well, maybe we need 2 4-team divisions. And that's not going to happen, right? You're not going to have, we're going to put 8 expansion teams in. So that makes no sense. But okay, let's say a 4-team European division, which when he was asked about it I don't know if he was in Brazil, but it was around the Brazil game at the start of the season. He was asked by NBC, okay, first game here in South America, what about an international division? And he said, I think the first thing we're going to really focus on is the ownership's approved 8 games already. I hope to get that to 16 at some point in the future. Let's see how that goes. But I do believe there are a number of cities internationally that could do it. It's always a competitive side we worry about. So he's there saying, we haven't done 8 games yet. We need to do 16 and then we can see. So I think what he was saying, that basically a load of people go to the Super Bowl and ask questions who've got no business being around the Super Bowl. And the questions they ask are generally atrocious. Now, I'm not saying this was an atrocious question, but he's speaking to a different audience, right? So around the Super Bowl, I did a lot of work on BBC Radio. And I was told each time, look, bear in mind, these aren't NFL fans. You've got to talk to them in a certain way, right? That makes total sense. When I'm talking to you and your listeners, Gus, I'm talking to the sort of people who are big enough fans that they subscribe to a UK Jets fan podcast, right? These are hardcore dedicated fans who understand the game. When I'm on the radio, I'm talking to different people who don't understand it, and I want to get into it for them. Like when Roger Goodell is talking at a press conference ahead of the Super Bowl, he is talking to absolutely everyone, NFL fans and beyond. I think he's holding out this little kind of carrot of for example, a London franchise. Now, London, maybe it could have a franchise. There have been dozens of games played in London. I've been to every single regular season NFL game played in London. So I've seen how it's changed at that time. Who else other than London? I know I'm just talking now. This has become a monologue, but I'm going to throw something to you two guys. Let's say, right, we're in a meeting with the NFL and we're like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to have a 4-team European division. And we're going to say, right, well, London is obvious. It's hosted dozens of NFL games and those games sell out constantly. Right. What are the other 3? So Gus, go.
Right.
Give me the other 3 cities in Europe.
I will be very quick with this because I know Daniel wants to get going. Before I give my opinion on this is what Roger Goodell also said October 2022. This is a direct quote. There's no question that London can support not just one franchise, I think 2 franchises. Goodell began. I really believe that. A finished quote. And then it goes on.
There's too many football clubs in football anyway. You know he wants to do this. You know he wants to add it. Okay, one will be at Tottenham Stadium. The other one will be probably Wembley. At the new Everton Stadium. Come on.
No, they're not putting teams outside London.
No, it's London. It's Wembley and Tottenham. But getting back to your original question, okay. So you've got the originals. It will be AKA World League. So you're looking at, you've got to look at where the fan bases are as well. And I've said this for years and years and years. Everyone outside of in the USA seems to think that like London is the be all end all of football outside of the States. It isn't. It's more popular in Germany. It always has been.
Absolutely.
The service personnel after the Second World War and the Cold War, all stationed out there. That's why it became popular out in Germany, so big, so quick, and that's where it's most popular. So if you were to ask me now, which you just have, where are these teams going to be? I would say there would be one in London, obviously. There would be one probably in Barcelona, and then I would say
Okay, they don't have anything approaching an NFL spec stadium even in
right.
Barcelona. So carry on.
But if you were to
I'm not,
ask me,
sorry, I don't. I'm not. No, I'm not saying that to be argumentative to you.
yeah.
I'm using this to illustrate my point.
And then the other two, I would say that they are probably both in Germany.
And there is not an NFL spec stadium in Germany either.
So, and that's the thing. You've got to, and I totally agree with you. And this is the thing. You've also, not only does the stadium have to be NFL ready, but you've also got to have the fan base that wants to go to it. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole World League situation all over again, where you've got these stadiums that seat 60, 70,000 people, and you've got 20,000 people in there, and it just echoes. And it's awful.
So Gus, you probably know the answer to this, but how many NFL spec stadiums are there in Europe?
I actually don't know the answer to that one. One?
Okay.
Two.
Tottenham Stadium and Real Madrid's revamped stadium. They are the only two. Madrid will host a game, still hasn't hosted a game. So the idea of saying there are cities around the world that could have an NFL franchise when there are only two NFL spec stadiums. Now, I'm sure listeners are like, but wait there, they've played games in other stadiums. Yeah, they have. Players don't actually like it. Now, I was there in the locker room for all of the early Wembley games that they played for the regular season. And it is not set up for an NFL roster. These are reasonably large sized for I'm going to use the word soccer, for a soccer team, right?
Don't just say because I'm here.
No, I just want to be able to differentiate between football and soccer. I don't have to say American football and football. So I'm going to say football and soccer.
Okay, fine.
A football roster with 50 odd players plus all the coaches. So the way they had to do it was there were players having to get changed in corridors, right? It was an absolute mess, and they've never been able to change that at Wembley because they're not going to rebuild Wembley for the sake of one Jaguars game every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tottenham worked with the NFL to create separate locker rooms for NFL specifications, make the field dimensions, everything around the field, NFL spec, and an NFL spec field that moves in and out. Real Madrid, who have more money than God, were able to be like, we'll have a bit of that because we are completely redoing the stadium. Let's future-proof ourselves. Now, Barcelona, they have a massive stadium, but the club is basically broke. And that stadium is not set up at all. So, and in Germany, Bayern have got a lovely stadium. It is not remotely set up for the NFL. There's a reason that the NFL isn't like, we're putting a game in Munich every year. They are testing everywhere in Germany because they haven't found the ideal place yet. They're going to play in Berlin. The Olympic Stadium is a wonderful stadium in Berlin, but it is a relic. Now, I was there. I'm lucky enough. I had a VIP Champions League trip there with work many years ago. And I was there I was sat near Claire Danes. It was amazing there. But the stadium is a bit of a dump, really. It is not a flashy stadium and has not had a lot of work done on it, unlike Bayern Stadium, which is new. So in Germany, yeah, there's the interest, but you don't have the stadiums. So you wouldn't be able to bank on, we're definitely going to put an NFL team in Madrid. Spain is yet to prove that it's got a huge interest in the NFL. The reason that it's got a game soon is because they've got the stadium. Build it and they will come. So, but let's say, okay, right, well, they decide that a team in Germany, a soccer team, in Germany, is going to build a new stadium and it's going to be NFL spec, and you put a team there, maybe. But that's the only way you could put one in Germany, because it's one thing having the Jags deal with the terrible Wembley locker room once a year, but the idea of, this is our permanent home. Some of us get changed in the corridors. It can't, that can't happen. You can do it as a one-off. Now, the players, they love the Wembley, they love the Tottenham experience. They feel that is a fantastic stadium, and it's just like a very modern NFL stadium in terms of what they need. Wembley is not. And Wembley's not even that old. But it was obviously not built with the NFL in mind. Why would it have been? So even if there was the demand, like you could sell eight games in 4 cities. So that's 32 games selling out every year. Like, we haven't done 8 yet. The idea of 32 and having those teams. So, okay, let's say, well, okay, yeah, we can sell those season tickets. If there's a team in Madrid and that team sucks, are people going to go? I doubt it. It's not culturally built in there. And the reason I'm throwing Madrid out rather than, I don't know about London. It might be fans would go. I don't know. But I'm really unconvinced about Madrid. And after London, Madrid is a choice because Madrid's the only one with a suitable stadium. As far as I'm concerned, this is never going to happen. Never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. I think what we will get is, as soon as he said previously, we're going to get ownership approval for 8 overseas games, I thought, okay, right, this makes sense. 3 in London, because the NFL has a contract for 2 games at Tottenham every year, and the Jags have a contract for Wembley, 1 game every year. So that's 3 locked in to London every year. So that leaves 5. Madrid has built an NFL stadium with the NFL. They are going to get a game every year now. That's done. So that's 4. So that leaves 4 gaps. It became clear they really wanted to be in Brazil. So that was 6. Because of the success of the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, to be fair, the organisers of that game have done all the groundwork. Nobody was thinking about doubling for the NFL until the success they had for the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. And the NFL took loads of people to the last game, the FSU Georgia Tech game in August, just making notes on everything to see how it went. So it was no surprise they were going to add Dublin. And then I just didn't know what the 8th one would be. And I was actually surprised it was Australia because the time difference and where that is
just mental. That is absolutely crackers.
And it'll be hell for the players, and they'll have a huge crowd because that stadium holds like 1 million people. But it's a cricket stadium. Those sight lines are atrocious for an NFL.
Gus, not to apologize, Ben, not to interrupt you, but think about the Oakland Coliseum during baseball season and how the foul territory is immensely as large as it would be for a, I guess, Aussie rules football match or a cricket match. Yeah.
Yeah, it's simply, it'll kind of look great on TV. They'll show this huge crowd and they'll do all the cliches of they'll have a bloody kangaroo kicking a ball and all this sort of stuff. You know how they're going to do it. And as a TV spectacle, it'll probably look decent. And if you are an Australian NFL fan and it's like, finally, we've got a game here, they'll go crazy and the game will sell out. But if you kind of compare the view from most of those seats compared with like a game, the view that you get in MetLife, you'd be like, why am I watching this game in Melbourne, 1 million miles away from the field, built for a different sport? It's just, I just can't see it ever happening. 8 is tough, and that's with London taking 3 and Madrid taking 1. To get to 16, now, you can have obviously multiple games in Germany. If we're talking, right, let's see how we get to 16. So we have the 3 in London. Maybe we're at 2 in Madrid now. So that's 5. Germany could definitely support 3. You've got the stadium issue, but everyone's got the stadium issue apart from those. So maybe you have 3 there. So at that point, you're up to say 8. But you've still got to find another 8 with, okay, right, with Dublin. We're doing Brazil. We're doing Melbourne. Maybe we're doing Sydney as well. Maybe we're doing them back to back. I don't know. And like, at what point are you like, right, now we're doing Tehran, Pyongyang? Like, it's crazy. Now, I'm all for spreading the game, but I think we only get to 16 international games once the NFL has managed to push through an 18-game regular season. And as someone who was against the 17-game regular season, I'm obviously against an 18-game regular season. I'm not one of these people that's just like, the more football, the better.
It's the quality
16
as
was
well.
perfect. Exactly. The strain on these players' bodies. Now, it can sound sanctimonious, like we love to see hard hits and we love to see the physical side of the game. So maybe it sounds sanctimonious of me to be like, oh, the players' bodies, if they're having to jet around the world and they've got to play 18 games rather than 16. But it is a legitimate concern, just the general wear and tear. Or you get to points where, like in baseball or basketball, load management of like, okay, well, this player is going to be rested for this. They're only going to get so many reps, and you don't know how much you're going to see of certain players. I don't know where it'll end, and it would be silly of me as someone who has, like, you know, literally written the book on the NFL's relationship with UK fans to be against international expansion. Not against international expansion in terms of spreading the game, spreading the love of the game. But if you do it where it dilutes the product, harms the players, it can't be good for the long-term growth.
Daniel, what's your perspective on this?
My perspective is this, and that, hearing Ben talking about the original World League of American Football, brought back many, many days, because just to let you guys know, I have a inaugural players card set, trading cards of the World League of American Football. In fact, it is in front of me right now because, you see, my idea has always been to bring back the World League of American Football for you guys in London and for, when it was brought back as NFL Europe. I wanted to bring it back basically separate season as a spring league here in North America.
A developmental league.
Exactly. Yeah. For, free agents, for those drafted rookies that, they're going to get a taste of playing professional American football and have it being played either in Europe or in North America. So this is what I would be doing. And I think I made it more simpler and better. There will be two conferences, the North American Conference and the European Conference. 6 teams each. Here are the teams. In North America, you bring back some of the older names from the original World League. You bring back, and of course, you bring back the Montreal Machine from Canada. You bring back the New York, New Jersey Knights. You bring back Orlando Thunder, Birmingham Fire, San Antonio Riders, but you add a professional team to play at the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. So you can see that's a natural rivalry. Montreal versus New York, obviously also in the NHL, New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens. You have that southeastern rivalry, that southern rivalry, Orlando, Florida, Birmingham, Alabama. And then, of course, you have that Texas-Mexico border war with San Antonio, Texas, and Mexico City. In the European Conference, I would bring back the London Monarchs. I would bring back Frankfurt Galaxy. From NFL Europe, I would bring back the Scottish Claymores and have them play at Hampden Park. I would bring back probably another team from Germany. Also maybe actually a third team from Germany, and also bring back the Amsterdam Admirals. So it would be Frankfurt Galaxy in Germany, maybe the Rhine. Dusseldorf.
Yeah, the Panthers.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the Rhine Fire.
Rhine Fire, that was the other one.
So at least, and now here is how the setup would be. It would be basically teams would play against each other home and away in your own conference. That would be 10 matches. 2 games Intra-conference games. So you would have one game where the 6 European teams would travel to North America for 1 week, and then another week later in the year, it would be the 6 North American teams traveling to Europe.
So they all go at once. So it's the same
Correct.
for each team. Great.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, love that.
Correct.
Love that.
Now, obviously, the scheduler will here's how it would change it up. London Monarchs could host Orlando Thunder, while London will travel to San Antonio to take on the Riders. And then each and every season, you can flip-flop whoever they go to where, and the North American team can go to whoever in Europe. Now, playoffs. Top 2 teams in both conferences will make the playoffs. So the first place regular season will face off against the second place regular season. First place obviously will host the match. Whoever wins the conference goes back to the World Bowl. One season will be hosted in Europe. The next season will be hosted in North America. Then you flip-flop each and every season. So that is how I would bring back the World League. I would make that adjustment. And not only will it satisfy the NFL, it will also satisfy those in Europe and people here in North America that wouldn't mind seeing this spring season league come over. At the same time, I agree with Ben. I don't think having a European conference would work for an NFL regular season because there's already too many teams. Obviously, 18 games would probably be better, but still, time, the time difference, your body's got to be readjusting to the clocks. I really think, you would have, and also you would have to add, 2 bye weeks for World League to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
2 bye weeks. You're going to need multiple bye weeks in the NFL because you can't have one. You're going to have to at least 2 or 3 to make this happen. And that would extend the season further. And, you'd probably be having preseason games in July and then start regular season games in August.
Right. Can I make some tweaks?
You do listen. This is where, we can make notes and make suggestions. Go ahead.
Because this isn't me saying, here's why this won't work and me tearing it apart. I love it. I want to make some tweaks.
That's fine.
I think you need to have a team in Madrid because of that stadium.
That's fine.
So let's say London, Madrid, Scotland, 2 teams in Germany.
Yep.
And then have we still got room for Amsterdam there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So we keep Amsterdam there.
Yep.
So I don't have a strong opinion on your US plan, other than the fact I love the idea of a team at the Azteca. With the intra-conference games, here's how I would do it. I would make it so that the 2 games you play, the 2 international games that you play, one is against a team that is now your designated rival, which happens in college football now, where the conferences have got bigger and they've protected certain matchups that, right, you 2 are playing every year, no matter what. And at certain points, a new team has come in and they don't have any natural rivalries and they're just told, this is your new rival. So you make it so that every year London play New York. And maybe it's Madrid versus Mexico City just because of the Spanish language connection. And you do it like that. So they would alternate. So one year that game is played in London and the other year is played in New York. And the other international game you play, and they would have to just tweak this depending on the standings. But you would be, if you finished first, you would play whoever finished first in the other conference next season. Like it works in the NFL now, where you'll play teams in a certain division, and then the spare game is against the team that finished in the same position in another conference. Now, it might be that, okay, well, one year New York and London both finished third, but we don't want them to play again. So you'd have to just tweak it and just accept that you may end up, certain teams, you don't play them for a while. But to have that natural rivalry where it would just create this thing of like, if Mexico City is desperate to beat Madrid each year, and New York and London and however else it works, or maybe you put a team in Paris and Paris play Montreal, I don't know. But just to create that particular rivalry that goes across the Atlantic so that, like you say, you have those natural rivalries built in that are geographic, and then you create these international ones. I would also make it so that you had a play-in game. So I agree, you want the champion of each conference playing, so you never have two North American teams or two European teams in the World Bowl final. You don't want that. You want one of each. You always want it to be one of each. But I would say that in the conference championship game, if you finish first, you are in the conference championship game, and then second and third play a play-in game. The team ranked second obviously would host, and it just means that teams, the season as it went on, more teams would be in contention to do that. I would love a proper developmental league. The UFL is going to start again soon. You can't watch it in the UK. I doubt many people care that you can't. I kind of would like to see it, but it's not a great television product because I don't think enough people care about the teams themselves, even if they're interested in certain players. But if you had it, like in the old days where the NFL was involved and the NFL could allocate players, because like the teams, every player on a UFL roster right now, they are just people who don't have a contract and are not expecting to get a contract unless they do something that can potentially catch the eye of the NFL. Whereas if the NFL could allocate players, then that's great. And maybe you have it that in the old days, you'd have teams allocate. So, you might have a game played in NFL Europe and there's an edge rusher from the New York Jets on one team and there's a quarterback from the other team from the Jets. And you have a situation where you might have your edge rusher injuring your backup quarterback, or more likely third string quarterback in a game. So I would make it that certain World League, let's just call it the World League, certain World League teams would be matched up with NFL franchises and they would allocate to them. So it would make sense if the Jets and Giants would obviously, the team they would be allocating to would be the New York franchise. And maybe all the Florida teams would be allocating towards the Orlando team, for example. Some would have to be international, obviously. But just, again, it could create a connection. And maybe it would mean that you're a Minnesota Vikings fan and you know that your players are allocated to the Frankfurt Galaxy. Maybe you're like, okay, well, I'll watch this World League and I'm a Galaxy fan. I'm not a fan of one of the teams in North America. I want to watch my guys. So it might be that, again, you have fans going to those games in Orlando to see their players, their Bucks players, their Dolphins players, their Jags players, and so on and so forth. It would have to be more than that. We'd have to figure it all out. Once we get a call from Goodell, once he listens to this, we can iron out the details. But it creates another NFL product at another time of year. Now, the reason the NFL don't really want to do this is it's expensive, and they're happy for other people to just do it themselves. The UFL, like the NFL doesn't have to pay anything. They don't have to pay for colleges to develop players. They can just reap the rewards. And I imagine they would look at this and think, well, European audiences now are used to seeing NFL regular season games. How are they going to want to watch this? But the thing is that if you feel confident that you have educated and enthused enough fans in Europe, they will be interested in this.
Well,
like,
Ben, if you don't mind me saying this, I think it's time for the NFL to actually look for owners in the European cities. I mean, I don't know who is the wealthiest Englishman or the wealthiest Scotsman, to maybe want to own a franchise. But if you can entice them and say, I would like to, or at least maybe a consortium of some sort, like an ownership group, get together and say, we are interested in creating a brand new league for our sport to be officially in your country and in the continent. And so, put it out there and say, whoever's interested, we would love for you to be a part of this. And so maybe if they want to be a part of it, let's just say for the hell of it, let's say, Daniel Levy, who is the owner of Tottenham Hotspurs, let's just say he decided to say, you know what? I've signed this deal with the NFL to allow 2 games in my stadium, and we've already made the improvements of the new stadium. We can slide out the grass pitch, put in the field turf. Why not go for it? Why not do this? I want to own the London Monarchs and bring them back from the dead. Yes, I want to be a part of it. I mean, he could do that if he wanted to.
And it's extra revenue. Those weekends where Tottenham are not playing a home game and you've got another product there at your stadium that otherwise is sitting there empty, doing absolutely nothing. And you don't have to worry about wear and tear on a football pitch as it would have been in the past, because it's that NFL field turf, like you say, that just rolls in. You get people in, you price those games competitively. It is not like going to see an NFL game. And if kids can get in for £5 with an adult, family tickets, all this sort of stuff, you can get a decent crowd. Now, what's more, like Gus, you'll know how difficult it is getting a ticket to an NFL game in London.
It's extremely difficult, and not only is it difficult, it's super expensive as well to get anything half decent.
What if you had a season ticket for the London Monarchs, you were at the front of the queue?
Lovely.
And you had an advantage. Now, they'd have to have some sort of checks here, because it might just be like, well, I'll buy that season ticket, it's cheap. I won't go to the games, but it puts me in the queue. Maybe it's like a thing, you have to get like a QR code, and every time you like scan your QR code at the games doing stuff, maybe it's like, oh yeah, and you've bought this merchandise. You accumulate points that put you higher up in the queue. There's a particular pre-sale of, right, okay, everyone who's reached platinum level from going to these games in NFL Europe, buying merchandise, blah, 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 blah. Maybe there's like, you bring friends along and there's like an affiliate code. So, right, okay, you've brought extra people into the sport. You're in the platinum level. You get first dibs on tickets. Then you're enticing people in another way. There are business ways of making such a thing work if the NFL were like, yeah, we'd like a developmental league and we may as well use it to promote the sport beyond our borders, which Gus, I know that you don't love the London games, which I completely understand. And I would agree with you that going to a game in America is much better, but it's not always an option for everybody. But I'm sure if the NFL said, look, okay, we're going to do 8 regular season games around the world every year, just like we're going to do in 2025, that's the blueprint, that's the plan. And we're going to have this NFL Europe that's something like the idea that we've discussed here that Daniel proposed. You'd love that, right? You'd be like, yeah, this is good.
Can I just circle back? I'll answer your question. If we're going back to the NFL and like, we're kind of like going off a little bit of why the NFL would or wouldn't work. And we've just gone with like an alternative league with the World League, which I happen to say is a really good idea. Going back to the NFL and how players and things would be allocated to a World League team. I think what would also have to happen is the rosters in the NFL. You'd have to increase them to say, I don't know, 60 on the roster, because you've got the practice squad guys. So the practice squad guys are going to be those guys that get recalled for injury or for developmental purposes. But on so many occasions in the NFL, we let, and I can speak for other fans of teams as well, we let players go that we don't want to let go. And we'd prefer to see them farmed out somewhere else, like a World League. So that is another option. And also you have the international players as well. So that's another thing. You could fill a few roster spots up with homegrown talent from the individual countries, which I'd love to see as well. That's growing the sport. That's growing the sport, grassroots. But I want to, you bring up something really interesting from where we are now in this conversation to what you originally said, and it's about the old school fans, and now you've got these different fans. We've talked about this before, Ben. The fans that are coming into the NFL game now, they're different to the fans like me. So a diehard fan that wanted to experience the whole full NFL thing, be that in the States or in London. And after going to a couple of London games, realizing that it really was not the same experience. But that doesn't mean to say that it's a bad product, but it's a bad product for me because that's not what I go to a game for. I don't want to see 30 other teams there. I want to see the two teams fans playing there. I don't want to see millions of different jerseys in the stands. I want to see the two teams represented in the stands more so. But that isn't going to happen. That isn't the way. That said, the Vikings-Jets game, it was predominantly Jets and Vikings, as you've pointed out to me the other day. I had a good look at that. But we've got a different breed of fan now coming into the NFL. So circling this all the way back to where we are now with the World League, I think that this isn't a bad shout, Daniel, of bringing back the World League because, and as you've rightly said, it's getting those rivalries, the London v Scotland and whoever, with the other rivalries that you mentioned. That's where you get the interest from. It's the rivalries. Those are the games that you look forward to, and I think that this could possibly have legs. I really do, but that's where I am with it. I don't like the London games, as you've pointed out, for a myriad of reasons. I still think that you could probably go to New York, watch a game for pretty much the same price as it cost you, for me especially, to go to London, hotels, tickets, and even the pricing of the tickets. I mean, I paid £150 for a ticket in what would have been the end zone. I was like a mile high in the stadium. It was so high up. It was ridiculously high up. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if this was the States, you'd be calling this the bleachers. And this ticket would be $40, $50, not £150. And London is super expensive. I find London super expensive anyway. So, and it's just...
It's different when you live here. When you live here,
yeah,
you're used to it.
Well, obviously I used to live down there, and sometimes I'd just think, crumbs, going to a game would have been at most an hour's journey for me by car or by train or what have you. And now I'm a minimum of like 7 hours away, so it is a bit of a trek for me. But there's lots of people all over the UK that do come to London to watch these games, and Europe as well. It's not the same for me. We mentioned this as well. You've got the thing of the travelling situation and all the rest of it. And if you think about it, if you look at a picture of the map of America and you drew north-south a line right down the middle of it, right down the middle. So you've got Kansas City on the right-hand side being the furthest leftmost, and on the right side, and on the left side, you've got Denver, and then you've got Arizona Cardinals, the LA Chargers, the LA Rams, the Raiders, the 49ers, and then right up in the corner, you've got the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seattle Seahawks, the distance, Seattle to London, 4,800 miles. And that's a 9.5 hour, call it, 9.5 hour flight. And then you've got to go back the other way as well. So, and we touched on this as well, the whole player safety. I cannot understand how the CBA are not getting involved in this with playing more games and now going to 18 games as well.
They're still pushing back on that. Now, I would imagine they will be talked into it because it'll be things like the salary caps going up and this, and they'll be talked into it or railroaded into it. But officially, they are still resistant to playing an 18-game regular season. But I would say, Gus, you're right. It's basically inevitable.
It isn't, and it's sad. I mean, they and the league keep banging on about player safety and all the rest of it, and now we've introduced guardian caps, and quarterbacks are wrapped pretty much in bubble wrap. I mean, the calls that we've seen this year have just been absolutely unbelievable. I think I could speak for all of us here. This game is just completely irrecognisable from when we got into it, when we started watching, like say back in the 80s, it's just completely different. And special teams, let's just do away with special teams, because it's just the new kickoff rule to me is an absolute joke.
Oh, and what about in the Super Bowl where the Chiefs were in a position where they would obviously kick?
Oh, just lost you there, Ben. Say again.
Oh, sorry. In the Super Bowl where the Kansas City Chiefs would have wanted to try an onside kick because they were desperate, but it was late in the third quarter, so they were not allowed. You're not even allowed to roll the dice like that until it's the fourth quarter. The things that they've done to special teams is wild, and hopefully those things will be changed sooner rather than later, because the special teams changes have not worked.
Yeah, and we've got an ex coach, Mike Westhoff, the legendary Mike Westhoff, who's an absolute special teams guru. He wrote a book, Figure It Out. I think it was like 2 years ago now, and he was going on about future changes, and he was saying that he hoped that the league wasn't going to wreck special teams because they'd tried doing it before, and being the wily old goat that he is, he kept on coming up with new ways around all the rules that they kept on bringing in. But it's just now got to a point now where it's just so sanitized, you might as well just do away with it. As I say, the kickoff, punt return, pretty much the same, but kickoffs, you might as well just start at the 30. And this time last year, we were talking about how many more touchdowns you're going to get off kick returns, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, I felt confident, Gus. I thought it was going to be good. And
yeah, I did.
I was sat on holiday. I sat there in this lovely sports bar in the Caribbean watching the very first preseason game. It was the Bears-Texans. The place was full of Bears fans that I'd met at the resort. It was great. And we were talking about, this kickoff rule, and it was awful. And we were like, maybe in the regular season, it'll be okay. Nope. It was terrible throughout.
It's just, personally, I'm not a fan of our commissioner. I think there are too many changes coming. When the league's moving in a breakneck speed in a direction I'm not particularly keen on. Can I, summarising this podcast, can I assume that we are all in agreement that the NFL playing outside of the US, and I mean league-wise, I mean not setting up other franchises, so non-franchises outside of the US is a bad idea?
So wait, playing like the international games as we have now?
Yeah, forget that. I mean actually setting up a franchise outside of the US.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that to me is a bad idea, because
No, I would agree with that. That's a bad idea. Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it would be interesting, but I mean, we got to be practical here. The time zone difference, the body clock changing, adjustments, that would really put a big damper into setting up a franchise in London to face off against a regular season game against Jacksonville, against Dallas, against Los Angeles Rams or Chargers. I mean, yeah.
They would never play Jacksonville because they would be Jacksonville.
That's very true.
The other thing is,
good old Shad Khan.
The other thing is as well, I mean, we had Mr. Rogers screw up our TV viewing again for the second time this year. Until we got flexed out of it. But in 2023, I think we had something like 7 games on prime time. So as someone living in the UK, this was my experience of it. I had to book 7 days off of my holiday allocation, which wasn't ideal because I was having to book single days, which, for want of a better word, pissed my employer off no end, booking single days, because it's difficult to cover. On the flip
side,
Boss,
I hate to do this to you. Boss, I hate to do this to you, but
yeah, exactly.
Jets come first.
exactly. And on the flip side of that, I mean, it's pick your poison kind of thing. On Twitter, there was various Jets fans saying, well, I quite like having a game at 9:30 in the morning with my breakfast, and then I can watch the 1 o'clock game and then the 6 o'clock game. I get 3 games. There is that. But there were other fans, conversely, that saying, I'm doing things on Saturday morning. I can't watch this, or I'm working that late night. I can't, welcome to the UK and our viewing problems. But so having these games outside of these different time zones, for me, football, 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in the States, Eastern Time, 6 p.m. in the UK. That's when football should be played. Yeah, and you have your Saturday night or Sunday night football, but now we're playing Thursday night football, Friday night football, Saturday night football. It's what we're going to have next. Tuesday, Wednesdays as well. It's coming, and it's just
Well, that game in Australia is going to be played local time, I think, at about 9 or 10 a.m. or something, because that's how it would be at a sensible time in America. Which
imagine being a player.
And those games that if you're a Jets fan and your team is playing in London and it's like, okay, well, I get to watch this at 9:30, whatever time it is. If you're in California, that's not 9:30 in the morning. That's that's a lot earlier.
Nope.
And
That's at least 6:30 in the morning in Los Angeles. Yep.
Enjoy your beer.
So that ideal. I want to bring something up as well about how I think part of the reason that they floated this idea of a whole division is because there is currently no team that is a relocation candidate. So I made the joke about the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they are now spending lots of money on stadium redevelopments. The Jacksonville Jaguars are not going anywhere. Now, there was talk that they were going to play a chunk of their games in London, and I heard that from a source at the Jags over a year ago. But since then, it's been decided those games will actually stay in Florida, which makes perfect sense. I'm not appalled that this plan didn't come off. They will continue to play a game in London, but that while the stadium was being played there, they would play in London. But who else could move? If they just decided, right, we want to put a team in London and we got to move one of these teams, there isn't a relocation candidate right now. So I used to use LA as if you wanted your city to buy you a new stadium, you would say, well, we could go to LA. Well, LA's got 2 teams now, so no one else is moving to LA. There aren't really obvious places in America where the city is going to build an absolute NFL palace for over $1 billion. So that's not going to happen. So teams are very steady and set right now. There might be talks of people like the Bears want a new stadium, but the Bears aren't going to leave the Chicago area. People were up in arms that they could move out to the suburbs. That seemed beyond the pale. But can you think of, unless I'm going crazy, I can't think of an NFL team right now that is a bit jittery and could move, even if it was to another American city. Who's going anywhere right now? No one, surely. So the only way you could put a team in another country right now is if you expanded. And that seems incredibly impractical. I think it's something that the NFL is saying, but what they really want is just to play as many neutral site games across the world as possible. Because if a London Monarchs team is in the NFL and goes it would be 2-16, of course, because we are an 18-game regular season. They went 2-16. You run the risk of ruining sport in that country. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you know what, we're going to bring 5 games to London every year. We're going to play 16 around the world. 5 will be in London. You're going to get games in September, October, November, December, and you're going to see 10 different teams. That, I think, is more appealing to a UK audience than here's one team that could be really bad playing 8 games, and you won't see the same variety. I think if they had a system where it meant that you got to see over the course of X number of years every NFL team in London, that I think is more enticing. Do people want to switch teams?
I think also one thing that the NFL will never really convince the UK audience of is bearing in mind that this is a winter game, is spending November sat in either Wembley or Tottenham Stadium for 3 hours in the winter watching a sport that isn't primarily your own sport. And as I say, a lot of those fans that do go to those stadiums, I would call them either casual fans or tourists. There is a contingent of hardcore fans, but even as a hardcore Jets fan, am I going to want to go and watch the Jets playing Kansas City in Tottenham. We're 5 and whatever we're at. We're 5 and 10 or something, or 2 and 10 at the time, playing a Kansas City team that hasn't lost a game, sitting there for 3 hours. And as you've just rightly said, you know, you've got a London Monarchs team like 2 and 16 or something. Are you really going to want to sit there for 3 hours? That's a tough sell for the UK audience. Very tough sell.
Absolutely.
And the UK media would consider a losing team like that to be a bit of a joke,
Oh yeah.
because there's no heritage there already. It would be a bit of a joke, and people would it would really damage the sport in this country. On the flip side, if you had a London Monarchs team that all of a sudden became amazing and was in contention to win the Super Bowl, then you might see something incredible in this country. Whether that would be sustainable, I don't know. But, and I know we're not going to go on for many, many hours, but here's something that I think is important to think about. Players don't want this. Now, the players that come to London, they love that experience. For a lot of them, they're like, I haven't been out of the country before. And they love that experience, especially if there are certain activities where they get to go and do things and see things. But that's like a bit of a holiday in a way. It's very difficult to imagine, even if we're talking one franchise, but let's say it's this whole division with a 53-man roster for each of those. So you've got hundreds of players all playing in Europe. Now, I am not going to be snooty about that. It's like, I don't want to live in Berlin, for example. And that means that they're insular. I think lots of people don't want to live outside their home country with all the things that they're used to. I know people like to say, oh, Americans don't have passports and they don't travel. Forget that side of it. Think of it just as if you were told, oh, you're going to live in a country where you don't speak the language and the food seems weird to you and you've got to live and work there for the next few years. And you've got to take your family. Your kids have now got to go to school over there and that sort of thing. That is not going to appeal to every single player. Some players will be like, okay, yeah, I'll live in Amsterdam for a few years. That'll be an amazing experience that I would not have got to do. But for a lot of them, that's not what they want at all. So how do you keep those players happy? And I'm ignoring all the tax and salary side, because I'm sure you can make it so that they're registered in America so that the salary goes through that and they're paying US taxes, etc., etc. But just the principle of being drafted by a team in Germany and you thinking, I don't think you want to live in Germany. That seems a bit weird to me, because I grew up in Kentucky and I was hoping that I would be in the South, you know? And I'm not saying that to take the piss out of like Americans not wanting to travel, because I think that can be kind of a universal thing. For example, if they were told, oh, your company is relocating, but don't worry, you're not losing your job, but you are now moving to Poland. Like it or lump it. And you don't have a choice. That's the company you work for. That's unfair to me. Now, yeah. I'd love it if every player was like, oh yeah, this is an experience I want, but I don't blame them if they don't. Why should they? And it's hard when you are drafted that you don't get a choice in who you play for. You live in the NFL dream, you're going to earn a lot of money, but for it to be out of the country, and like far out of the country, not like it's the NBA and you're drafted by Toronto, you know, and you are right by, you know, the American border, and it's easy to go and see your family. But if you're in Europe, you don't get that. And I think there is not enough thought put on what about the players when it comes to this.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely spot on. We're going to have to leave it here. Honestly, I could talk for hours and hours about this, preferably over a beer. But that's all we got time for on this pod. We're going to have to follow up on this, because I think that this story is going to keep rumbling on. Well, it has done. It seems to be growing with interest in various different articles, and there's so many articles online. If you Google an NFL in Europe, honestly, there's so many. There's something's going to happen. I'm convinced Mr. Goodells is trying to make something happen. Hopefully he doesn't. And for all the reasons that we've said, from player safety to convenience of things, it doesn't make any sense. Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Can you let people know where they can find you on social media, and just tell us what you've been up to?
Oh, well, generally I can be found on X at Tweets from Ben. I'm not really enjoying life on Twitter. Most people aren't right now. I'm going to try and use Blue Sky more. If you're on Blue Sky, you can find me at Ben Isaacs. And that's Isaac spelled Isaacs. Most of my stuff right now is I'm doing a lot with the new spin-off show of the Nat Coombs show. So I'm still doing lots of appearances on the Nat Coombs show, particularly on Edge Rush every Friday. But College Days, which is already the most listened to college football podcast in the UK, that you can find on all podcatchers at College Days. That's Days, D-A-Z-E. I do that show with Dom Corbett. During the college season, we are taking you through all the college football stories. Right now, we are very much in draft mode. So you can find our 2-part mock draft in the archives right now. And we are going to do the combine the next couple of weeks. We're going to preview the combine on the show we record on Monday. Then we're going to see the combine winners and losers. And then we're going to go through all the position groups ahead of the draft, because the draft is really coming up, Gus. It's really coming up.
It is.
So
it's not far away.
it's an exciting time. You know, the off season, I love the off season. I mean, in a way, there's no such thing as the off season. So it's the draft, it's free agency, and I still lap it up. And do you know what? When you said about 1 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. UK time, when we were kids watching it on Channel 4, that's when it was on.
The magic.
That's when it was on.
Yeah.
For you and I, that is ingrained.
Yeah.
That is the time. That's the time.
And those are happy days. And if it hadn't been for those happy days, I don't doubt if I'd be an NFL fan now. I've talked about this the other day. I'm not sure if I was getting into the game now whether I would be an NFL fan, because it's just changed so much. But that's fantastic, Ben. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And as you've said, we've got the draft coming up soon, the combine and all the rest of it. So hopefully we'll get to talk before that. I know that you're very, very busy. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to be on the pod. And all the best moving forward, Ben, and hopefully talk to you soon.
Y'all know what to say. On 3. 1, 2, 3.